Okay. Hi, Davis MacDonald. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Douglas?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. I love all your books behind you there. Those are very
I have a
nicely
huge
bound.
library downstairs, but yes, we have a collection of old books, old other books from all over the place.
Yeah, I'm kind of a fan of those beautiful bindings on those books. Doesn't necessarily make the content better, but it certainly improves the aesthetic value of the book. Yeah. So you are an author as well, and you're also an attorney. Are you still practicing law?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a sort of a narrow specialty. I'm a securities lawyer, a transactional securities lawyer, which means I have the fun of doing deals, not going to court, doing deals offshore, onshore, all over the country, as well as California. And they actually pay me well for it, so it's great fun.
So you're promoting your book. You've got how many books have you written now?
Book eight, I'm working on book nine. I turn out a book a year. I have a busy schedule, so a book a year seems to be work pretty well for me.
Okay, well, let me back up here a little bit. So you've been a lawyer for many years, I presume?
Many years, that's right.
Okay, so why did you start writing? What was the motivation to start writing novels?
Well, as a lawyer, as a transactional lawyer, such as I, and a securities lawyer to boot, you write all the time, and your tools are words. So it's great fun to play with words and write things. Novels are just a different form of using those same tools in an exciting way to create a little humor, a little suspense, excitement, tell a story, and maybe to make a point that people ought to hear.
Are your stories fiction or nonfiction or a mix of both? Or
They're all fiction, but they're based often on real events that occurred to me over the course of my career, or to clients, or to friends of clients, or people that I've looked at, or actual events.
well, looking at your bio, the cruise is addressing the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Is that correct?
That's right.
What is that exactly? I've heard of it, but I don't really know the details about it. What is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch?
That's a patch of blue Pacific, about twice the size of Texas. And the trade winds and currents swirl all the garbage from across the Pacific Ocean kind of into this patch naturally, and that's where it congregates. And the plastic there uh, breaks down in the sun, but it doesn't really break down and end. All the plastic that man has made in his entire civilization still is in the world. It doesn't degrade beyond micro bits. So the stuff breaks down into smaller bits, and then ends up raining down on the surface, under the surface of the water, like rain onto the bottom. It gets covered with algae, and fish eat it, and birds eat the fish, and people eat the fish, and pretty soon you have perhaps the next pandemic that's coming along. I don't know. There's some concern about that. In my story, The Cruise, we have this executive that just happens to be the executive and controlling shareholder of a soda company that makes soda bottles, and these are single-use soda containers for, like Coke and Seven Up and so on, and that's the second biggest source of plastic for the garbage patch is single-use plastic containers like that. That may be our next pandemic. I mean, we're worrying about COVID right now. Next year, we might be worrying about the plastic in our bodies.
I don't know what the cure for plastic in our bodies would be to get rid of the garbage patch and to stop using plastic, I think.
That's right. That's exactly right. Stop using plastic unless it's absolutely necessary for a particular use. We certainly don't need it for a Coke bottle or a 7 Up bottle or a Pepsi.
Well, tell us a little about the cruise. This is a fiction based on the garbage patch?
It is. So each of my novels, there's eight. This is book eight. Really, yeah, I try and draft and write a book that's a lot of fun to read, suspenseful, exciting, some humor in it. But buried in all that is information about a significant social issue in the 21st century of ours that I think people ought to know about. So the cruise, the issue buried in this book, is the plastic, and how we're consuming the plastic, and the plastic is never disappears from our environment. Every piece that's ever been made is still out there in microform, and we're consuming it. So that's the message. But this isn't a scientific paper. This is a rollicking mystery novel. It's a typical dinner party mystery, as a matter of fact, because my main character, the judge, and his wife get on this boat from Los Angeles to Hawaii, and they have turns out to be a 6-day cruise, and they're assigned to a table, and at this table is this key financier who owns this soda bottle company, and his family, and his various key officers. And one by one, people at this table start dying during the course of the cruise by mysterious accidents. And the accidents pile up to the point where you got to say, gee, it's very unlikely all these accidents would happen to the same people, the same table, who all know this guy, and what's going on here. And so that's the mystery, and that's what the judge has to figure out.
This is a little bit reminiscent of Murder on the Orient Express.
Right, or Agatha Christie's 10 Little Indians. It's sure it's
Okay.
sort of a traditional. It's the traditional dinner party mystery setting with a new take, wrapping around an interesting 21st century problem we have, which is plastic. And there's a lot of humor in it, and vignettes and so on of things that have happened to me and other people on cruises.
I think that's interesting to think about how you would tie together the garbage patch with this murder or dying. You didn't necessarily say murder, did you?
No, I didn't.
So,
Accidental deaths, apparently, a lot of them.
okay. Very intriguing, very intriguing. So we've got about 2 minutes. Can you just tell us maybe a little bit about some of your other books, or if they're
Sure.
what they're about?
Book 7, The Lake, came out in November of 2019 and really predicted the COVID flu of virus that we're dealing with now still, 5 months before it became apparent that was a problem. Set in Lake Arrowhead, and again, a murder mystery, some humor, suspense, excitement. My books are fun. People like to, they read them on the beach, they read them on airplanes, they read them standing in line, they read them past their bedtime, they even read them on a Zoom call in their lap sometimes, I'm told. But in this particular case, I wanted to deal with a couple of interesting things. First, pigs are one of the biggest sources of heart valves, and designer pigs are groomed to provide heart valves for people who have to have open heart surgery. I wanted to talk about that a little bit. And then secondly, although it's illegal in all countries in the world except Iran, there's a huge black market in body parts. If you need a kidney, for instance, if you sign up to get a kidney here, there's a long, long wait. Well, if you've got plenty of money, you can do a sort of a tourist jaunt to China or Indonesia or Philippines or some other India, other countries, and you pay the money and you'll get your kidney a lot sooner. It may save your life. That's all illegal, of course, but it is done. So I wanted to talk about that. And finally, I wanted to talk about scientists who have amazingly decrypted our DNA, and they're able to match and change species in terms of the DNA. So these scientists who were in the illegal body part business, brokering all over the world, and also growing designer pigs for legitimate use here in the US for the valves, decided that they wanted to create a better designer pig that had a DNA that was a human DNA, so they could almost match the designer pig with you, Douglas. If you needed a kidney, you'd have your own designer pig here with a kidney or some other parts that would really match. There'd be no rejection, and you could just plug yourself into those parts and go on. Sounds like a great idea. And so they mixed the DNA of humans into the pigs, and they didn't really think about the swine flu, which in 2019 was sweeping Asia and parts of Europe and the Middle East. I think the Chinese killed 2 million pigs because of the swine flu, very infectious. And so the swine flu in my story gets into these designer pigs in Lake Arrowhead in their lab and jumps over into the human species, and suddenly you have COVID or something like COVID. And that's sort of the 21st century social issue that I think people ought to think about, buried in this very suspenseful, exciting mystery story.
It does sound really intriguing. And it also sounds intriguing about the cross DNA between man and pig.
So along the way in that story, there's the judge, my main character. The first two books of the series are a love story, and it continues, and he gets married and so on. And so at this stage, book 7, the judge and his wife, Katie, are kind of having a dispute, and it's become sort of that 7-year itch period in the marriage. And so I researched that, and there is some statistical reason to think there can be a 7-year itch. So there's a lot of angst and drama and fun about that as well in this mystery story.
Well, we do have to wrap it up. We are out of time. Do you have a website that you want to give out where people can check out your books?
Sure. If you just Google Davis MacDonald author, it'll come up. And remember, Davis is not David. It's Davis, not David. And MacDonald is MAC, like old MacDonald had a farm. So Davis MacDonald author, and it'll come right up on Google. You'll see trailers for each book, video trailers, and description of the books. So there are 8 books. They're in a series, and I think people find them very fun to read. They're great fun.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing with us. This was interesting. Best of luck with your books and your law practice and everything you're doing.
Thank you, Douglas. Thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit.